Welcome everyone to Augment Expert Series. Augment Ventures is an early-stage investor in mission-driven, diverse founders transforming foundational industries, making them more productive and sustainable. Today we have with us David Schurman, CTO and co-founder at Perennial. David and his team are building something very interesting at Perennial, and David will share that with us momentarily. One of the things that we are very curious to understand from David is how he manages multiple responsibilities as a CTO, keeping the vision of the technology going forward, managing his team, and also finding mentorships in this rarefied sector where the technologies and people are just coming together. So David, welcome to our podcast. Please tell us your background, how you got to Perennial. We're very eager to learn about your journey.
Yeah, I got started in climate about 10 years ago, which was well before climate was cool. And I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, near Boulder, Colorado, which is one of the hubs for atmospheric sciences and climate sciences. And I was a lab assistant in a lab where we measured samples of the atmosphere. And that was right around the time when we crossed the 400 parts per million threshold of CO2 in the atmosphere. And that was really the calling of how I needed to solve this problem in some way. Fast forward a long time to Perennial. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We're solving climate change, and we're trying to be part of the solution by unlocking agricultural soils as one of the largest potential sinks of atmospheric CO2 down away into a place where it can't cause warming anymore. How we do that is we develop tools and monitoring technologies to help measure the amount of carbon in soil over time so that farmers can get rewarded for farming in a way that is more friendly toward the climate. It's been quite a journey getting here. I've been at a few research institutions, like I said, in Boulder, been at NOAA, National Center for Atmospheric Research, NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, and kind of settled on something very close to home here, working on agriculture and climate.
That's a great story, David. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Perennial solution? How do you really deliver the solution to your customers? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so starting with the problem right now, outside of climate change, that's a huge problem. But why are we not using soil as a way to address this? Why is that not happening today? And the main reasons, like everything else, is it's an incentives problem. The people on the ground who need to do the work, which are farmers and ranchers, don't have the right incentives to change how they've farmed for sometimes 100 years. What we do is we unlock the ability to do that by making measurement, which is the number one blocker and number one cost expenditure for these programs, actually achievable. And we do that through technology. We offer a platform to run all of these programs. It's like the operating system for a regenerative agricultural program. And then most importantly, we offer novel measurement technology that uses AI and satellite imaging to map soil carbon across a landscape. Essentially, this is using the latest science in how we use satellite imaging to look at what the biological response of an ecosystem is. And then we take on the ground soil samples and analyze those in a lab for carbon as our training data. We can build powerful algorithms, we can validate these, and that lets us apply carbon measurement at cost and at scale anywhere we want.
So this is a really complex process, and the talent and expertise that you need to deliver this solution is spread across different sectors and different capabilities. So as a CTO, David, and as a co-founder, when you're sort of assembling the team together to really deliver this product, right? I mean, this is out there in the future. I was just wondering if you could share with us, how do you keep your team motivated? How do you manage to integrate this expertise in your team and keep them moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I like to say we have the easy version of this compared to a lot of companies because of the mission-driven nature of what we're doing. So on the one hand, we like to look for people who share our ideas about why climate change is important and why it's an important problem to solve. I think in any company, and especially startups, it's really important that people feel like they're working towards something higher than themselves, something greater than themselves. And with that, we have a very clear alignment of values. We're literally working on one of the most important humanitarian challenges of our generation. So keeping that at the center is important. What I've learned is that, especially if you're in a mission-driven company, it's a little bit easy to start taking that for granted. And I think it's important to keep reminding people of why we're here, and integrate that into our core values and remind people when they're doing a good job towards that mission.
Awesome, David. So, again, the team and I've met them, come a couple of times to Boulder to see your team, and I feel that the passion that people have, but to keep yourself motivated, again, you are working at the cutting edge of the technology. You're creating a product that doesn't exist, or at least a few of them. So the space in which you're operating, there are just few people, and for your own self in terms of mentors and to have some sort of brainstorming sessions and so on and so forth. I was just wondering, how do you keep yourself motivated, and what kind of tricks or tools that you use to make sure that you have resources for yourselves to continue to excel in the job that you do?
Yeah, I think there are two sides to this that I like to think about. One is your team, and how do you build your team in a way that is supportive and also covers your own blind spots as a CTO. And the other is, as you mentioned, mentors and support networks personally and professionally. On the team side, I think we are in a very interesting space because in many ways, climate tech is very, very much all deep tech. There are a few exceptions, but climate tech is dealing with ways of getting stable molecules out of the atmosphere. You need a lot of deep science to do that efficiently. And in our case, the science comes in with how are we leveraging AI on this very, very precise measurement challenge for a variable that you can't even see in the soil. So what I've needed to do there is, there's no one person that is an expert in all of the different topics that you need in order to be successful at that. So I've been trying to be very intentional around building the team in a way that covers those core areas, and especially with CTOs, right? And you're working on a space that has a lot of breadth to it. You have your zone of genius, but that might not encompass everything. So you really need to make sure that you have the people that will span everything, and ones that you can trust to have that full breadth of expertise. And that makes it a lot easier because you're not responsible for things that you really don't know. You don't have intuition around. The other side of
Right.
this, as I mentioned, mentorship. This is really important. I have a few longtime mentors. I have a number of other founders that I work with and essentially commiserate with, and it's just very helpful to have an outside perspective on what you're going through. What I found is that it's important to have some of these people in a similar space, right? Sometimes the pure software, pure SaaS people can't really have insight into what we're doing on the deep tech side. So that variety is important. But at the same time, there are not a lot of climate tech startups that are at a later stage. Actually, a couple of days ago, there was one of the first ever Series C rounds in climate software with Watershed. So there aren't that many people who have already gone through this path in the same area as us. So that's more of a peer-to-peer type of relationship, and trying to learn from that. And the few people who have gone through this, go find them and be friends with them.
Yeah, that's a great approach, David, and I think your entire team has done a wonderful job of leveraging their network and being open-minded to listening and learning from other people's experience. This brings me to another question. Like you just said, Watershed just had the Series C, and I got that in the newsletter just yesterday, and yay for them, right? And many more to come. I mean, ultimately, you're building a business. I mean, it's deep tech, it is new technology, uncharted territory. It's an investment. And in all functions of the business, there are near-term goals, short-term goals, but technology is not something that you can just open a can and, it's ready to go. I mean, it's a lot of experimentation, it's a lot of hypothesis and so on and so forth. But still at the end, you have to keep inching towards a goal, towards outcome, and so on and so forth, right? And there are many turns and twists in that way. And I was just wondering, going back to your process of managing the team and motivation and so on and so forth, how do you balance this near-term goals and objectives from a commercial standpoint of view and long-term objectives of really making a difference, right? How does that happen?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest challenges. And when you come up with a formula for that, let me know. I would love to see what that is. How we've thought of this so far is one, yes, it's a very real challenge. And especially again, going back to this deep tech thing, we are doing new science, and in climate, it's not only important to do that science, but you have to get it validated externally. I think this is kind of similar to healthcare. There's one of the parallels here. So how do you do science that you don't know how long it's going to take? You don't know how long it's going to take to get validated, and keeping that moving in the long-term direction, but also meet your short-term commercial requirements to, actually be a business and not a research lab. The ways we think about this is we try to somewhat parallelize our efforts between research and development, as it were, or delivery. And when we have a topic that is really important to stay focused on in research, we really try to isolate the time for that and say, we need to protect this time. This is a long-term investment. And even if it's one person working on that and continuing to make progress without being interrupted, we're going to try to do that. And that's always a moving target. We could do better at that, but it's a startup, so not that many people. And then with the short term, it's, what do we have today and what are we building toward in order to meet these immediate requirements? So making sure that we're matching up the stuff that we decide to take on with what we're ready for today or what we will be ready for soon. And being very intentional in keeping the commercial side of the company in contact with the technology side of the company. Another reason the CTO job is difficult at times. And I've liked this lately in part because you get some unexpected behavior, which is in the process of delivering something versus doing research and development, you actually get new learnings that help the research process because you're sort of forced or compelled to do something to completion with a deadline. So having a healthy balance of that has actually been quite nice, but it is a fine line to walk.
Yeah, awesome, David. This is great insight from you. And you're absolutely right that commercial pressure to deliver something of value to a customer and that cadence of consistently getting the customer that same outcome that your solution or product might be, it's a really important thing, and it influences and impacts your long-term research or the entire product suite that you might be thinking of building for your customers. So that's really good. And you said that's where being a CTO and being the visionary of driving the solution to meet the customer needs is a very tricky one. And my last question for you here would be, as you see a younger version of yourself, or you think about it, what is it that you would tell the younger version of David, like, I wish I knew? And then secondly, maybe something inspirational for the young CTOs that are particularly working in climate tech, because there are not many parallels for them to look up to. That would be very helpful, David.
Yeah. So wait, let me just pair the question. So it's first, what would I tell myself, and then what advice would I give others?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of things I would tell my younger self, but I don't know if they're things that the younger version would be ready to hear, because a lot of it is just around intuition. But I guess what I would say is, find mentors earlier and before you've built up the experience and intuition yourself to have gut feelings on what makes sense and what doesn't. Find people that can help you with that, whether that's on your team or not.
Awesome.
just especially with young founders, that's an experience thing. And you need to find people that you can trust and then trust them. I guess that's maybe part of the advice as well. But more generally, I would say,
Inspire them,
yeah,
David. They tell
inspire
them
them.
how great the CTOs are. How can they become great?
All right. How can you become great as a CTO? That's a great question. Yeah, I would say it's a very hard job because you're caught in between these two sides that are almost polar opposites of each other. But anytime that there's a big differential between things, you can also use that to great good, not just great stress. So it's in many ways the highest impact position that you can possibly have. Like, think about this in comparison to the other roles in the company. The CEO has to spend all their time fundraising and dealing with investors. No offense. The salespeople are just talking to customers and getting dragged around by what they want. And the people below you on your team are just full execution mode. So you have this vantage point where you can be looking at everything. You can see problems and solutions that nobody else can in this seat. If you just keep an open mind and listen and not get too bogged down with the stress of that. So I think that's pretty exciting. Just understand the uniqueness of the position that you're in and how, it lets you do things that nobody else can do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, David, what you just said, that you have the vantage point of, seeing what is happening in the entire company and stitching it back together. So you become that central node that is sort of important in actually delivering the vision of the company. So I think, at Augment, we are fortunate to have other CTOs who have a similar vision. They really take strength from other functions of the operations, and they then try to stitch it and deliver it in a fashion that is meaningful and impactful to customers. So David, thank you so much for your time, and we'll continue to watch your progress and cheering Perennial, and I'm pretty sure we'll be celebrating Series C soon. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sonali.